Hello and welcome to the Cancer News. I'm your host, Dipesh Uprety, and today we are joined by Dr. Chadi Nabhan, the author of the new book, Toxic Exposure. Dr. Nabhan is the chairman of Precision Oncology Alliance at Caris Life Sciences. He has extensive experience in the field of medical oncology and is currently an adjunct professor at University of South Carolina. He holds an active medical license in 5 states, has numerous peer-reviewed publications, and hosts his own healthcare podcast. Dr. Nabhan, welcome to our show.
Dipesh, thank you so much for having me on. It's an honor and privilege to be with you today.
Okay, so let's jump into the episode and get it started. Today, I'd like to announce the launch of this beautiful book. It's called Toxic Exposure by Chadi Nabhan. And we are very excited about this launch, and we cannot wait to talk more about this book. So, Dr. Nabhan, congratulations again.
Thank you.
And tell us about Toxic Exposure.
Toxic Exposure is a book about the first 3 litigation trials that were brought up by patients against Monsanto and their herbicide product Roundup. Roundup has been linked to the development of non-Hodgkin lymphoma, a form of cancer. There were patients who were heavily exposed to Roundup by virtue of the fact that Roundup is the most commonly used herbicide in the country and in the world. And they subsequently developed non-Hodgkin lymphoma, so they brought up these lawsuits against Monsanto. I was the medical oncology expert witness that testified alongside other expert witnesses in the first 3 litigation trials. So really the book describes the stories of these 3 litigation trials that took place between 2018 and 2019.
So, Dr. Nabhan, how was your experience in the courtroom? Did you have any intimidating or nervous moment?
All of my moments were intimidating and all of my moments were nervous. I'm not, I don't think doctors are trained to be in the courtroom, similar to the fact that lawyers are not trained to be in hospitals. It's an intimidating experience being in a federal courtroom in front of a federal judge or a state judge. And I was hoping that the jury and folks who were attending the court don't really realize how fast my heartbeats were. Yes, I was very intimidated. These lawyers, they strive on the fact that they want to discredit you, because if they discredit you, they are going to discredit you in front of the jury, who ultimately will make the final call. And they also can score points on you. I recall many of these moments, and usually it's a lot of these aha moments that they say, well, wait a minute here. This is what you said in the other deposition. I think you're saying something different. And you try to tell them, no, you're taking this out of context. You have to read the entire transcript to make sure it's actually what you're portraying is really the true fact. So I was very nervous throughout the entire thing. I don't think I don't want to be in the courtroom ever again. It's very nerve-wracking for me.
Wow. So tell us about what drove you into this journey of writing this book. I believe this is your first book.
It's the first book I've ever written to the public. I wanted to detail the stories behind these patients who really brought these lawsuits, and behind the lawyers who really defended them and invested time, effort, and money to bring these lawsuits to completion, and behind the other expert witnesses as well. And I thought to myself, it's really something that everybody else needs to be aware of. I wanted to make the book about the patients, obviously, but also about the evidence and how I looked at the evidence, and how I evaluated the evidence as an oncology expert witness, because I've never done that I've never been in a courtroom as an expert witness before. So I wanted folks to see what happened as if they were in my seat, because science, I've said that many times before, science is never perfect.
Right.
We can never have perfect science, but we have patients that we need to counsel, advise, and take care of despite imperfection. And I wanted to portray that. I wanted to explain What is the science I looked at? What's the science that Monsanto looked at? How did I really evaluate both sides? And how did I come to the conclusion that Roundup is linked to the development of non-Hodgkin lymphoma in general and to these patients that I represented, and I basically testified on their behalf as an expert witness. So that's really why I wanted to write the book. And I can tell you, I'm going to recall one story with one of the lawyers in the second trial. It was the Hardeman versus Monsanto trial. And he contested, I was on the stand. It was the Daubert hearing for that patient. And basically he said, well, how come you've never told fellows and students and residents and faculty members that Roundup causes lymphoma? I've never seen you lecture about these things. And I told him I didn't know I can. I thought by law, as an expert witness, I'm not supposed to. And it's like, no, you can. And right there, I thought to myself, okay, well, I think I'm going to actually try to work on this because it's hopefully going to help educate others, educate the public, educate people about this is a very important topic, and hopefully folks are learning from it. And it took a while, but special thanks to Johns Hopkins University Press, my publisher, for standing behind the book and publishing it.
Thank you for sharing, Dr. Nabhan. May I ask you to maybe read something for us from the book today?
How about I read, I don't know how much time we have, but I can read maybe in the preface, I guess.
Sure.
So let's see here. I hope the jurors didn't ignore the science, because that would mean I didn't do my job, which was to show the jury that Roundup and its active ingredient glyphosate could cause cancer, specifically non-Hodgkin lymphoma, in some situations. In May 2021, one of the federal judges who played a prominent role in these trials, the Honorable Vince Chabria, paid me and other plaintiff experts a compliment in denying one of Monsanto's motions, saying in his ruling that Monsanto has lost the battle of the experts in 3 trials. I felt pretty good about that, especially after the way Monsanto had attempted to exclude my testimony, challenge my opinions, and dismiss the opinions of the plaintiffs, other experts. As draining and demanding as the experience was, I must admit that it was also dramatic. In many ways, the experience was akin to being a character in a John Grisham novel or a modern-day version of Silkwood. I'd like to tell you the tale, not as a legal expert, a journalist, or an environmental scientist, but from my ringside seat as one of the medical oncology witnesses. I was someone who had never testified in court as an expert witness before, but suddenly found himself testifying in 3 highly visible trials within 1 year. I invite you to see the American judicial process the way I saw it, at the highest levels, behind the scenes, and with life, death, and billions of dollars in the balance. Reading this book, you can sit behind me and watch epic trials. You'll see a quintessential David versus Goliath battle unfold before your eyes.
Thank you, Dr. Nabhan. So after hearing this preface, I'm definitely going to read Toxic Exposure. So ladies and gentlemen, if you want to know more about the rise and fall of Monsanto, the real science behind the cancer-causing weed killer, and the courtroom drama, the book is Toxic Exposure, and the man is Chadi Nabhan. Dr. Nabhan, thank you very much for joining us today and sharing a book with us.
Dipesh, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Toxic Exposure is now available, and be sure to check it out. That's all for today. This is Dipesh Uprety signing off. Thank you.